Welcome in, everybody. It's a Friday edition of Sports Daily on KFH. I'm Tommy Castor alongside Jacob Albracht and Jad Chambers producing the show as always. The IHOP hotline is now officially open at 869-1240. Hope you're having a great start to your Friday. We've got a busy show on tap for you today. A lot to talk about, including Jay Delling from the Wichita Open joining us again to talk about round number 2 of the Wichita Open happening today out at Crestview Country Club, and a recap of round number 1. We'll talk U.S. Open golf a little bit later on in the program as well, and some talk about the Kansas City Chiefs also. So welcome aboard on the show today. If you're a regular listener to the show, you might be like, okay, what the heck is going on here? We've got Tommy, we've got Jacob. But Tommy kicked everything off, and normally that doesn't happen. That's because Jacob is on the road, joining us live from Amarillo, Texas. Good morning, Jacob.
Hey, good morning. It's I'm like tucked away in a room with the rest of the family in a different part of the house. We're in travel mode, so some of the family's even still asleep. But we're here. We're rocking and rolling. We got this thing set up. We weren't 100% sure if we'd be able to do this, but we did. We got it on the road. Glad to be here. Tommy's gonna make he's gonna drive the ship today as we do this. As we're remote, live on location.
Well, here we are. We're ready to get into it on a Friday today. Of course, you can always listen, of course, on KFH, but you can watch our video stream as well on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitter. You can join the program that way. Leave your comments right there on the screen. We'll be able to get to them as the show goes on. Want to kick off, Jacob, by talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. They had their ring ceremony last night. It was really cool to see all the players and the coaches, dapped up, wearing the tuxes and, walking the red carpet, getting their rings. Cool to see guys like Eric Bieniemy come back and get his ring. Of course, he's no longer with the Chiefs. So first off, just at a top line level, there's a couple things to get into, some storylines with that ring ceremony. But first things first, that was a really cool thing to watch. Just those guys getting their rings and looking great while doing it.
Yeah. Do we normally care about this? Is this normally a thing, or is this a new thing? Because I was trying to get a grasp of like ring ceremonies.
Yeah.
And I don't remember this ever being a thing. And I get it. This is what happens when you're, the talk of the town and you do this more than once. But this isn't like a normal thing, is it? Like, do we normally pay attention to ring ceremonies?
Well, I mean, I think we pay attention to it when our team wins the Super Bowl, right? I mean, like and for whatever reason, I don't remember. And maybe it was because of COVID. I don't know if there was one when the Chiefs won a few years ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember it, but this one was really cool. I mean, and credit to the entire Chiefs organization for putting on this event. I mean, it looked like the Oscars. It looked like, I mean, these guys rocking the tuxes, and good to see Andy Reid, rocking his tux as well. And they're doing red carpet interviews, and there's the ceremony with the trophy, and then of course they all get their rings. And I don't know if you had a chance. I know you've been out of town. I don't know if you had a chance to see the actual ring and what it looks like. Man, it's sharp. It is. It's legit.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of it.
I didn't see the ring yet. I followed along just because of the fun ones that we'll get into. But no, I didn't. I haven't looked at like an image of the ring. But they're always just unreal, and like it is a little strange, right? Because you don't really wear them. Like the guys in the studio will wear past rings and stuff, but like you're not wearing that around town. You put it up. It's basically a trophy, and yeah, it's. I'll get a look at this new one, but they're always just, it's just insane to me what goes into those rings. But, bling is a thing that I'm not, I don't, I have a wedding ring and I have an Apple Watch, and an Apple Watch was a big commitment in my life because I don't like jewelry. Like I'm not a bling guy, but yeah, those rings are cool. And that's how we judge everything, is on rings, right? So it has more significance than the ring itself. But yeah, it's one that you'd like to have in the trophy case for sure. And they got two of them. Of them.
So there's a part of me, just a quick side note. There's a part of me that, when I don't know what the age is. It might be 55. It might be 60. When I get older, there's a part of me, I want to be that guy that rocks like the gold bracelet, and then I've got the chains, and I've got like,
oh really?
I'm
so
not
like
saying
Mike Malone. I saw at the
right.
parade, Mike Malone for the Nuggets had just like a huge gold necklace, and I was like, wow, that came out of nowhere. So you want to be like, you're going to surprise people. You'll show up and they'll be like, whoa, what is, like, he's all iced up. Like, what is that?
Yeah, that's kind of, I haven't fully committed to it, and I've got some time to figure out if that's the direction I want to go. But I think
like
that
tracksuit, like velvet tracksuit with it.
Velvet tracksuit, the big sunglasses, slicked back hair, assuming I have any left. That's kind of the direction I want to go. But I mean, we could spend hours talking about red carpet fashions and rings and diamonds and all that stuff. We're not going to do that. We are going to get into a couple of the storylines, though. By the way, I like that angle, that view of you. If you're on the video stream, you're watching Jacob with his legs crossed right now.
I'm trying to make this work. I'm in a chair.
You've been in California and now you're in Texas. You would think you'd be able to get some sun and actually get a little bit of a tan on those legs.
That will never happen. I sunburn and then I turn pale.
So I mean, I guess that's an advantage to maybe checking out the video stream here this morning. We are going to get into the storylines, though, from the ring ceremony last night. The first one, and Jacob, I don't know why this continues to happen. It happens over and over and over and over again, where there are players from other teams in the NFL that do things and say things to poke the bear and I guess motivate Patrick Mahomes, or have him turn into Petty Patrick, right? And that happened again with the Bengals. Jamar Chase, a couple of days ago, was asked the question about the best quarterback in the NFL. He said Joe Burrow, which I don't blame him. It's his quarterback. I mean, he's got to say that. And then the reporter followed up by saying, what about Patrick Mahomes, or what about Pat? And Jamar Chase said, Pat who? So carrying that storyline on into the ring ceremony last night, you got Petty Pat showing up, and he's got his tux on, he's got the trophy, he's got his rings, and wouldn't you know it, he tweets and just says, that's who. And I think it brings up a really important question. Why in the world do players in this league insist on poking that bear?
Because they have their guys back. We make way too much about this. Like, who cares, right? I don't even think, I mean, what Joe Burrow is great, and Jamar Chase is his boy for a long time, and they're just having fun. Like it's okay for Jamar Chase to take a shot because those two guys probably like each other, and it's not that big a deal. I do think, and I don't know what it is, and I've said this here 1,000 times, like, everyone's a little bit too defensive of Patrick Mahomes. Like, he is this unicorn, and but he can handle himself. Like, we don't need to take personal offense for him when other people doubt him. He can do that enough on his own. But that's what happens. Like Jamar Chase says that, and it's like the Chiefs world is like, what? Like, how could he possibly? Like, how could you ever say that about Patrick Mahomes? Why would you? It's like, guys, like, he's just having fun. He's got his boy Burrow's back. Like, these guys are just having fun. It's not that big a deal. If anybody can take offense, it can be Pat. He's not going to take offense. He's having fun back. He'll tweet that out. But I would be willing to bet that Patrick Mahomes and Jamar Chase probably have a fine relationship. I would be willing to bet that this will in no way impact that relationship. But I will say, to your point, yeah, Patrick Mahomes uses this stuff as well as anybody does.
Sure he does.
So
absolutely he does.
At the same time, though, like, if the Chiefs beat the Bengals next year in the AFC Championship game, it's not going to be because Jamar Chase in June made a joke defending his guy Joe Burrow. Like, that's not going to be the reason. But it will get brought up that way. Just watch what will happen, right? Like, it'll get brought up that way. I'm glad that it happens because it gives us something to talk about, and it's fun and entertaining. And I wish that, I like that more. I want players to do that kind of stuff more because it makes it more fun, right? Like, if they play in the AFC Championship game, you're going to get shots, you're going to get graphics, they're going to bring it back up. It'll add to the drama of it. But the reality of it is it's not that big a deal. But there are people that will defend Patrick Mahomes like that. Like they need to go fight Jamar Chase for him for saying something like that. And it's okay, guys. Like, it's all right. Let him have fun. Let Jamar Chase defend his guy. Let Jamar Chase take his shot. Jamar Chase is probably sick about hearing about Patrick Mahomes, quite frankly. And he can't blame him for that either. But Patrick Mahomes obviously earns all the recognition. Patrick Mahomes uses it. But I don't think this is one, Tommy, to me, where it's like, you're crazy for making him angry. And sometimes that happens, right? Like, sometimes you don't want to give guys bulletin board material. I don't think this is one of those. Like, I think that maybe that's going a little too far with this one. I think this one's all in good fun.
I do think that there is some bulletin board material there, though. And I know it's a long time before the Chiefs and the Bengals play. I mean, they play on New Year's Eve, and then, potentially we could see another matchup in the playoffs. So we've got a ways until that happens. And I don't know this whole entire thing could, probably will go away before these two teams face off against each other. I look at it less from the perspective of me or anybody else in the fan base feeling like they need to defend Patrick Mahomes. I don't feel like I need to defend him. I think his work does the talking, and the accolades he's gotten and the championships he's won and the MVPs and all of that speaks for themselves. I don't think he doesn't need me to defend him. I look at it more from the perspective of, haven't these other players learned by now that when you do poke that bear, typically it comes back to bite you? And it's not only just the players necessarily. You remember a couple of years ago when he was named, I think, the 5th best player or the 5th best quarterback, and he's like throwing touchdown passes and then he's counting to 5 on his hand, those things. Patrick Mahomes carries those things with him, not in a way that it, hinders him or that it dominates his headlines, because he'll always downplay that sort of thing. But his mentality, the mental side of it, when he goes out to play, you better believe that he remembers those sorts of things, and he lets his play on the field back it all up.
Yeah, I mean, you like that he does. I mean, that's one of the great qualities of Patrick Mahomes. Sometimes, though, I just don't know. Like, that one, I think, was very real. When I think there was a year like Madden ratings didn't go his way or something. That one probably was more real. I don't think this one's that real. I think he's just having fun. Like, I don't think this is one that genuinely annoys him or makes him angry or, even
if it doesn't, he can use it, though. I mean, he can use it as
he can use
ammo, motivation, all of that.
But he uses it for fun. So more than
looks like we're having some connection issues with Jacob here. So we'll come back to him when we get him reconnected. But I do agree with the overall sentiment that, he can use that as motivation. I do think that when push comes to shove, the the action of the tweet that he made last night at the ring ceremony. I think that plays into it a little bit too, and we'll see if that turns into anything, on the field when they match up the Chiefs and the Bengals on New Year's Eve. Another storyline that I want to bring up from that ring ceremony last night that I do think is interesting, and it does really play into where we've been this offseason. It plays into what we've discussed here on this program, over the last couple of days or so. It's Chris Jones. Brett Veach was on the red carpet last night for the ring ceremony, and the question was posed to him about Chris Jones. And basically, Brett Veach's quote was, "We feel good about where we're going to be with Chris." That's what he said. We feel good about where we're going to be with Chris. Now, obviously, that's something that he's got to say. He's got to use those words. That's relatively vague. There's really nothing in there that would indicate that there's, any kind of deal imminent with Chris Jones. But regardless of that, he's not going to come out and say, "Oh yeah, we're not going to get a long-term deal done with Chris Jones." So he's got to be, I think, fairly, vague in that, and definitely optimistic in that. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to this Chris Jones potential deal, there are reports that one of the things that the Chiefs and Chris Jones are waiting on is what happens with Quinnen Williams and the New York Jets. Will Quinnen Williams get a large deal with the New York Jets? He's the one to watch. There are reports and speculation that Quinnen Williams will ultimately become the second highest paid defensive tackle in the league behind Aaron Donald. Well, Chris Jones, I think, would also like to be the second highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL behind Aaron Donald. So it would lead me to believe that maybe one of the hangups, and something that we haven't thought about before, is that maybe it's because the reason that there's not a Chris Jones deal yet on the table is simply because they're waiting for what the New York Jets are going to do with Quinnen Williams, whatever that dollar amount is for Quinnen Williams. Well, once that's done, then the Chiefs and Chris Jones and their representatives can come together and be slightly above that. So that's one area to keep your eyes on potentially. I think we've got Jacob back here. One area to keep our eyes potentially on is what happens with Quinnen Williams.
And it's interesting too, because we, if you remember back like to the beginning of the offseason, that was a thing. That was the thing we were watching, right? Is Quinnen Williams and some of the other deals. But it's almost like but it's time to go now. And so I don't know what you're supposed to do, because you can't really say anything about that, but that was a fine timeline to think about in March, but not in June, because if Chris Jones is not coming to minicamp, right? He's not coming to minicamp, but because he wants to get paid more than another guy. So now you can't negotiate with your player. And so that's you can't do that. That's not the good way to operate business. At this point, if you're Chris Jones, if you're really going to wait on that, you got to show up to minicamp, because what are the Chiefs supposed to do? They can't control what Quinnen Williams gets.
Well, right. I mean, I think you're right in that regard, but also if that's a priority for Chris Jones and his representatives, then what other choice do the Chiefs have?
Show up to camp.
But then to just sit back.
Show up to camp.
Well, I'm not talking about what Chris Jones's responsibility is. What else can the Chiefs do other than wait around and wait for a Quinnen Williams deal to get done?
Well, nothing. That's the point. At that point, it's not on the Chiefs, right? If Chris Jones says, "I got to be the highest paid guy, and I got to be paid higher than Quinnen Williams is eventually going to get paid," that's not the Chiefs' problem. If that's your priority, show up to camp, because there's nothing the Chiefs can do about it anyway, other than say, "Yeah, we want you to be that too. Take our word for it," I guess. But that doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm a Chris Jones guy, but if the reason he's holding out on a deal is so that he can be the highest paid guy and get paid more than Quinnen Williams, then show up to work, because that's not the Chiefs' fault, right? The Chiefs don't have any control over that. So if that's what you want, then go to work.
I wonder, with how vocal, like I mentioned, Brett Veach was on the red carpet last night for the ring ceremony saying that they feel good about where they stand in regards to Chris Jones. I mentioned it a couple of minutes ago. He can't say anything differently. He can't come out and say, "Oh, things are bad," or, "We wish that he would be at, mini camp," or "We wish we could get a deal done right away." he's going to be optimistic publicly regardless of the situation. It just makes me wonder. I mean, I watched that clip of him saying that they feel good where they stand with Chris Jones. And I just got this indication that it was a vague enough statement that maybe things aren't as good as what he might be saying. Again, I recognize his position. I recognize that he can't come out on the record and say that things are bad. But I didn't get a whole lot of confidence. I didn't take away a whole lot of confidence from watching that clip. I'm not sure if anything is different, and I'm definitely speculating here, but how things are being portrayed publicly versus how they are behind the scenes, and especially if he's not showing up, and especially if he wants to wait for Quinnen Williams, I could imagine there might be a little bit of tension and friction there.
I got the same sense. I didn't love the body language. If we're talking about sports here, I didn't love the body language of Beach on the carpet. I don't know how much concern we should have. Like, it's hard for me because I get annoyed when I see that report about Quinnen Williams. I like, that was a storyline 3 months ago. That shouldn't be a storyline now in June when players need to be working. So, if those sorts of things are gonna hold this up, then I'm beginning to have less sympathy for Chris Jones in the situation. Like, if the Chiefs are trying to make you the highest paid defensive tackle today, despite Aaron Donald or whatever, then the Chiefs are doing what they need to do, right? Like, that's enough for me. Then it becomes a Chris Jones thing. So if they've got an offer on the table that makes him the highest paid outside Aaron Donald, that's enough. That's all they need to do. If Chris Jones doesn't want to take that deal, then we have to start considering the situation that maybe there won't be a deal. And then does he hold out? Is this his final year? How does that play out? Because that's enough for me from the Chiefs end.
Yeah, of course. Training camp starts in just over a month from now. July 30th is when training camp kicks off. And so if a deal with Quinnen Williams and the Jets doesn't get done until close to then, I mean, I think that it's on the table that this potentially for Chris Jones, if that's the reason why he's holding out, that could potentially spill over into training camp. And we're talking about a whole different situation here. So it's definitely something that continues to bear watching. Brett Veach did comment on it last night during the ring ceremony that they feel good, but how good he feels, I think you can leave that up a little bit to interpretation. Regardless, though, the ring ceremony was fun to watch and definitely cool to see those guys get their Super Bowl rings. We're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we'll give you an update on the U.S. Open and talk a little bit about the round one performances from guys like Ricky Fowler, Xander Schauffele, and others. That's on the other side of the break. Tommy Castor, Jacob Albracht, Jad Chambers. It's a Friday on Sports Daily. We'll be right back.
I restarted.
Welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on a Friday. Tommy Castor, Jacob Albracht, Chad Chambers producing the show. The IHOP hotline, 869-1240. And Jacob, we're officially underway in U.S. Open week out at LA Country Club. The nice thing about the tournament being on the West Coast is that you've got primetime golf. And I thought last night that it would be a perfect way to spend the evening for my wife and I to watch a U.S. Open golf. She did not agree with that. I think that because, there were other things she wanted to watch. So I got to watch a little bit of it. I thought that was a perfect idea. Hey, primetime golf, major golf. You can't get any better than that. I think I guessed a little bit wrong there.
Yeah, that's probably a wrong read. I can think of one time that I have ever been able to get my wife interested in watching golf on television, and it's when Tiger Woods had his last major win. That coming down that home stretch was, I think, the only time I've ever. Now, I the wrong read. Like, I would never even really ask, right? Like, hey, you want to watch some golf? Like, no, I don't. No, I don't think I'd.
How would you like to spend a romantic evening sitting on the couch watching the U.S. Open together?
Yeah. So we were, I'm in Texas and I'm with the whole family and everything last night. We had the Rangers, like everybody here, because we're starved for. We're all really excited about the Rangers, so it was fun just to have that game on, like on the back porch. Everyone's watching it. It was a close game last night. That's what we were watching. So I was not watching the Open, but I was following it and being very annoyed because the U.S. Open's supposed to be hard, Tommy. Like, what is happening here? This isn't what I want to see at the U.S. Open.
That was, I think, a little bit of a concern going into this weekend, simply because nobody knew anything about LA Country Club. Even a lot of the players had never played there before, didn't really know much about it. We had Sam Stevens on the show last Friday, so a week ago today, and he mentioned that he had never played it. I think that that's the majority of the players had probably never even been out there before. So nobody really knew exactly how it would play. There were some videos that came out earlier this week of how thick the rough was and, how fast the fairways like tilted and undulated the fairways were, how firm the greens were and all of that. But you don't really know that for sure until play starts. And there were a handful of players that went low in round one. And I'm talking record-setting low in round one.
Yeah.
Ricky Fowler and Xander Schauffele both finish 8 under par, shooting 62s. That has never happened in the history of the U.S. Open. Not only one player never shot a 62, you had 2 players shooting 62s in round number 1. So I do think that, and we don't know. I don't believe that round number 2 is even started yet because it's out on the West Coast. Maybe it's just now getting underway. But regardless of that, we don't know exactly how the USGA is going to set up the golf course for today or for the rest of the weekend. But I do think that it means that the USGA, they've got to find ways to make this course a little bit more difficult for today and the weekend.
Or do you just embrace it and say, we're going to probably have guys.
I don't think
does somebody chase 28 under? Because that's how we watch the Wichita Open, right?
Well,
like that's how we watch the Wichita Open. It's like, can somebody get to 25?
The difference, though, in that is that the U.S. Open historically, what it's known for is playing hard, right? So I think you can't just like throw your hands up in the air if you're the USGA and say, well, we're going to have some low scores. But outside of weather,
what are you going to do? Move the pin? Like that's all they can do.
Tuck the pins. I think you got to tuck the pins. Maybe hold off watering the greens, make them like super, super fast, like bikini wax speed. I think you have to kind of look at that a little bit.
Wait a minute. What does bikini wax speed mean?
Oh, you don't know that? You've never heard that before? No. So are you familiar with Gary McCord? You know who Gary McCord is?
Yeah.
He's got the handlebar mustache. Golf broadcaster. So I don't even know how long ago this was. Maybe in the 80s or 90s. He was a broadcaster for CBS and was doing the Masters at Augusta. And he mentioned that the greens were so fast that it looked like they had been bikini waxed or something like that. Like they were so smooth, like from a bikini wax, smooth and fast and quick.
Smooth,
and all that
makes sense. Fast though.
I don't know. That was the language he used, and it was an uproar. Like the fine folks at Augusta were so mad that he used that terminology to describe to the point to where they banned him. He was never able to broadcast the Masters ever again. Look it up. I swear to God, that was the last time he ever broadcast the Masters because he referred to the greens as like being bikini waxed.
This is a total left turn on this. Why do we put up with the Masters? Like, why do we put up with them? Like, they're so ridiculous and stupid like that. And this is going to cost me an opportunity to ever probably broadcast the Masters. But like, come on now. Like what? Like,
I believe there was
get over yourself.
There was another broadcaster one time that I believe he referred to the crowd as a mob, I want to say. And they're very particular. Like if you ever watched the Masters, like Jim Nantz, they use language for that one tournament that they never use for any other tournament throughout the entire year. Like it's not the crowd. They have to refer to them as the patrons, things like that. And so I don't even remember who it was, but somebody referred to the crowd as a mob. They were banned. They were never allowed back. Like there are a lot of different things that, go on there. But yeah, that's the reference of like a green being bikini waxed.
Okay. Well, now I'm a big fan of this bikini wax. And like, that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. I'm glad we got there with this story because that just bugs me. It's almost like the royal family stuff bothers me from England, right? Because why would we care about this silly fake lifestyle that is so unsustainable? Like it's not real. It's not to try to pretend like it's reality. Like the Masters sometimes, like just go play golf. Like let everybody appreciate the history of it, but you don't need to try to control what people say about your whatever. That box. That's
protective.
Anyway,
so protective of the of that golf course and all of that. But regardless,
be protective of the golf course, right? Don't let people take craters out, but don't be protective of the way it's talked about. It's stupid. The U.S. Open. I love the U.S. Open.
Yeah,
I love it because it's difficult. So now I'm trying to like wrap my head around. Could I also in this year, like I'm trying to put myself in like the USGA's shoes. Like how do you handle this? Do you embrace it? Do you just go all in with it and let it be this aberration and this wild because I know that's not what they initially want to do, right? They want to hold this reputation of having these really difficult golf tournaments, but at some point, like moving the pin, I don't think, and I'm not a golf expert, but I don't think moving the pin's going to keep people from, shooting 5 under around. Maybe it takes 4 or whatever. I almost at this point, like you said, forget it, and let's just see how low this thing can go. And I don't know whose responsibility. It's like
Looks like we've lost Jacob again. Yeah, connection issue with Jacob again. As far as that leaderboard, is concerned, for sure. I think that one of the things that struck me, and the setup of the course is one thing. The other thing is that one of the names at the very top of the leaderboard, Ricky Fowler. Like, are you kidding me? Ricky Fowler, who has basically fallen off the map over the last couple of years. I mean, this is a guy that was, in danger, I think, of falling out of, I don't think he was ever close to losing his card necessarily, but he wasn't qualifying for tournaments. He wasn't getting exemptions for tournaments. Here he is, out of nowhere, in my opinion, at least, out of the blue, 8 under in the opening round. I'm not so surprised that Xander Schauffele did it, because Schauffele has proven that he can go low. I just wonder with Ricky Fowler, and this is a guy that, as we all know, is still awaiting his very first major. And he's not getting any younger. Not that he's old by any means, but he's kind of one of the elder statesmen now on the tour. Been around for a long time. He's won the Players, but he's never won a major. And the knock on Ricky has always been, when he's been in contention, it's been a while, we're talking several years, when he's been in contention, can he back it up? Can he sustain 4 days of grueling golf, some of golf's biggest tests in the U.S. Open, and win a major? Time will tell. He tees off this afternoon, like 3:30 or 3:40 this afternoon, to see if he can back up his 8 under par. Some other notable players outside of Ricky Fowler and Xander Schauffele on the leaderboard. Wyndham Clark is at 6 under. Dustin Johnson shot 6 under at 64. Rory McIlroy at 5 under 65. Bryson DeChambeau at 3 under. Scotty Scheffler 3 under. There are some notable names as we get into round number 2 of the U.S. Open. We're going to take another break. We'll be right back. It's Sports Daily on KFH. Well, we got a fun-free event tonight. Odyssey and KEYN bring you Concerts in the Park, sponsored by IHOP. Free live music Friday from 8 to 10 p.m. in Andover Central Park at the Capitol Federal Amphitheater, 1607 East Central Avenue in Andover. This Friday night, the Lou Brown Band. You can bring your lawn chairs, blankets, and extra cash for the food trucks. No coolers are allowed. The gates open at 6:30 tonight. That's going to be a really fun way to enjoy a Friday night with free live music at the Capitol Federal Amphitheater. Jacob, I mentioned it yesterday on the show with Paul, and I know you've talked about it before too. The Andover Central Park is a lot of fun. That's where we go. We take the kids there to play on the playground and all that. That amphitheater is a lot of fun too. So if folks are looking for a fun, free family event tonight, free live music at the Capitol Federal Amphitheater in Andover Central Park will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a good place. Like if you haven't been out there, because I know everybody obviously doesn't live around there, but it's a destination worth driving to. It's a good area. If you got kids, it's pretty out there. It's kind of cool too. Like if you haven't been out there to just sort of get a grasp of where that tornado was and how close to all that stuff everything is, and like that path as we hear in the Panhandle. So there was a town yesterday. We were texting back and forth about this. A lot of people were texting me because they knew I was in this area, but there was a town here, Perryton, that got wiped out. And I just kept thinking of that tornado in Andover, and just that stuff, man. You just perspective on just smacking you in the face with it, like just out of nowhere. But yeah, that Andover area where you can just sort of see, right, like City Hall and the other stuff that was hit, and you're just like, man, like this, because it's pretty, like it's a really cool building, sits here unharmed basically, while everything like all around it got hit, and it's crazy. But it's cool out there. It's definitely worth getting out there.
It's fun, yeah. We were really fortunate that, and my wife and I live in Andover, really fortunate that park and the city hall and the library, the amphitheater, all of that right there, basically for the most part escaped a lot of damage and destruction over a year ago. But man, you're right. I was following the reports. I'm kind of a weather junkie. Was following the reports last night down in your neck of the woods where you guys are down there. I texted you late last night, like, is everything okay? Like, I didn't realize how I think it's fairly close to where you guys are, right? Where all those
it's a couple hours. So it's Perryton, so it's up on the very northern border of Texas, up kind of by Oklahoma. It's actually the hometown of Mike Hargrove, if you remember Mike Hargrove, big league player, manager. It's a pretty good. I'm trying to think of like what size town it would be compared to. Probably about like Derby. It's a pretty good sized town. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked this morning at the damage report, but we will send our prayers to them, because I think there was some concern of like injuries and maybe even fatalities, which just sucks. But yeah, no, it's pretty gnarly video. If you check it out, that's about 2 hours north of where we are now.
Well, of course, we'll be thinking about those folks in that neck of the woods. Last night looked like some pretty rough weather that ripped through the Texas Panhandle into Oklahoma. And we got a little bit in Southwest Kansas. Now, I don't think really anything significant came through Wichita last night, but yeah, I mean, definitely that time of year for sure. So thinking of those folks down in those neck of the woods. Let's do a giveaway before we wrap up hour number one here on the show. We're going to give away some Wind Surge vouchers. The Wind Surge, they've been on the road for the last couple of weeks, but they do return back to Wichita next week. And then I think they're in town for a while after that. So we're going to give away some vouchers. Let's do a pair of vouchers to see any Wind Surge game, home game of your choice. We'll do caller number 2 on the IHOP hotline at 869-1240 to give away. That way you can choose to go to any game you want to down there at Riverfront Stadium. So we'll do that right now. Jad will take the winner. Caller number 2 at 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline. Jacob, as we get into hour number 2, we're going to be joined by Jay Delling from the Wichita Open. We had him on yesterday to talk about hour 1, or talk about day number 1, that is, of the Wichita Open. We'll have him back on to talk about day number 2 out there at Crestview Country Club. We also have some breaking news. I don't know if you've seen this yet. Michael Jordan is finalizing a sale of the Charlotte Hornets that'll end his 13-year run as a majority owner of that team. That's coming into ESPN. Woj had that report a little bit earlier on, less than an hour ago. So I want to get into that in hour number 2 as well. We'll talk about Michael Jordan as an owner and how he compared as a player in the NBA. So we'll talk about that in hour number 2. I certainly didn't see that one coming. And you know what? I kind of feel like he's one of the more quiet owners in the NBA. You didn't really hear a lot from him as far as being an owner in the league is concerned.
I hadn't seen that. Boy, I don't know. I mean, I don't really care. He's a pretty silent owner, honestly, and it'd probably be a bigger deal if they were any good. We'd probably talk about it more. But for him being Michael Jordan, we really don't talk about him as an owner that often, right? Like, don't you think, like, he's one of the most talked about athletes of all time that, like, their people are obsessed with, and maybe it's probably just because they haven't been very good. But that's interesting. It is interesting that that's happening, and I'll have to look at that. I don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, so like I said, that came out, less than an hour ago from Adrian Wojnarowski, the senior NBA insider for ESPN, that Michael Jordan is finalizing a sale of the Hornets. It looks like the group is led by Gabe Plotkin and Rick Schnall, and that will end, like I said, in his 13-year run as the majority owner. It does look like Jordan is expected to keep a minority stake in the team, but he will no longer be majority owner of the Charlotte Hornets. So like I said, I'd like to get into that in hour number 2 to talk about how we compare and how we reconcile Michael Jordan as an owner versus as a player.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm looking at some of the details on this. There's some really interesting nuggets out of this. Like, Jordan wins again financially. Let's definitely talk about that a little bit.
Yep, that's gonna be how we kick off hour number 2.
I mean, just like at a bird's eye view, if this report, and I think it is true, he bought the team, Tommy, in 2010 for $180 million. Their valuation now is $1.7 billion. You're talking about it's like 1,000% return on $180 million.
I mean, that's Michael Jordan for you.
What?
Yeah.
God.
So from a financial point of view, I think it's pretty easy to say, hey, he won for sure. He made a whole lot of money off of that sale. But again, I do think that it's interesting to kind of compare and contrast how Michael Jordan was as a player versus as an owner. So that will be how we kick off hour number 2 on Sports Daily. And again, just as a reminder, like I mentioned, we've got we're going to talk Wichita Open with Jay Delling at 10:25. I'm really interested to hear from him as we've talked about what's gone on with the U.S. Open and the low scores there, how that looks, for the Wichita Open, because as you mentioned, Jacob, we know that historically with the Wichita Open, scores go really low. They go really low in the Wichita Open. I think the winning score last year was like 26 under. So
last year was the record, if I remember correctly. So now I've got like this contest. What goes lower, the U.S. Open or the Wichita Open?
Well, we'll get Jay Delling's perspective on all of that with the Wichita Open at 10:25 as we get into hour number 2 of Sports Daily. Let's take our final break of hour number 1. We'll kick off the second hour of the show on the other side at Sports Daily on KFH.
Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Welcome back, everybody. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily on a Friday here on KFH. I'm Tommy Castor alongside Jacob Albracht. Jad Chambers producing the show today. Your phone calls, as always, on the IHOP hotline are welcome, 869-1240. Thanks for those of you who are watching our video stream as well. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter, and leave your comments. We'll be able to get to them as the show rolls on today. Jacob, you sent this to me a couple of minutes ago. We were talking NBA with Michael Jordan. We still want to talk about that, but some more breaking news coming down, according to Shams Charania reporting for The Athletic and Stadium. Breaking news that the NBA is suspending Memphis Grizzlies star Ja Morant for 25 games. So we knew that Adam Silver was looking at wanting to wait until the NBA Finals were done and complete. They are done. They are complete. And now it looks like Ja Morant going to be suspended for 25 games. Are you surprised by that number?
I don't know. No, not really, because I don't know. The NBA is like you take your next steps. Like, he's clearly not getting the message. And what gets me more than, because Ja Morant's such a unique talent. Like, I think we're all pretty legitimately concerned for Ja Morant. But what concerns me as much as anything is like, I keep fearing like it's going to take one of those rock bottom moments for the light bulb to go. And I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know what rock bottom moment is. Maybe a 25 game suspension could be it. So there's that part of me that's like, okay, well, maybe this will be enough to finally like shake this behavior, whatever it is that he's struggling through, going through. But even bigger than that for me, I just keep thinking about like what is going to be rock bottom here that's going to, and that's a pretty scary thing, right? Like what is it? What's going to be worse than this that will finally get him back on the right track? I hope this is it. And so for that reason, like I think it's probably fine to see this hefty a suspension because I hope that that's what it is that gets him back on track.
Well, a follow-up on Twitter from Shams also says that Ja Morant will be required to meet certain conditions by the NBA before returning to action for the Grizzlies and will be ineligible to participate in any league or team activities during his suspension. So even though it's a 25-game suspension, there's no guarantee that Ja will be back after 25 games if he doesn't meet those certain expectations and the conditions by the NBA. So, of course, there's the personal side of this and the legal side of it, Jacob, but there's also the team component. And we know that Ja Morant is a very talented player, right? This clearly hurts the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, there's no other way around it. And so as much as I want to see Ja Morant get the help that he needs and get this all figured out and get back on the right track. I mean, there is that component where, you're looking at the Grizzlies and from a competitive nature, this absolutely hurts them. It probably hurts their bottom line, their revenue, all of that. I mean, there's a lot here. There's a lot of impacts that go, beyond just the personal accountability and responsibility that Ja Morant has.
Oh, there's no question about it. I don't know what you do if you're Memphis. Like, he doesn't have trade value or anything like that. I think, you just have to sort of, you just sort of have to like try and get him the help he needs, whatever it is. I don't know. I don't know what you do. And this is why, like, when teams go through and sometimes they get made fun of for how rigorous they are on like interviews and, all these crazy things that they do. It's because you put yourself in the Grizzlies situation, like everything about you like hinders on Ja Morant's behavior now. That's crazy, but that's what we sit here and look at. And again, there's a component of this where Ja Morant doesn't seem healthy, right? Like it seems like he needs some help there. But I think this is probably, and again, this is all on the surface, so I gotta like really dig in. But I think on the surface, this is probably the right way to go about this if you're the NBA, because all you can do is sort of like nudge him to make a better decision. But it's on Ja Morant, obviously, to make that decision. And I just hope that there's not some, again, rock bottom that's further down for him, because that kind of has scared me lately with him about just what could happen here.
Well, the other thing, too, I think to keep in mind is that I have a pretty good idea in my head, and I don't know Adam Silver. Obviously, I don't know what he's thinking, but I would imagine that this is it, right? Like, this is it for Ja Morant. I can't imagine that Adam Silver, I can't imagine that the Memphis Grizzlies, if this suspension, obviously is going to happen for 25 games, but if it still doesn't work, what kind of future does Ja Morant have in the NBA? Because I don't think there is one. Like, I think that this is strike number 2. It's probably strike number 3, in my opinion. Because I can't imagine the Grizzlies or any other team wanting to have anything to do with Ja Morant if this suspension
I can if he gets
work.
the help he needs. I can if he gets the help he needs. Like, if it doesn't immediately get better, but gets better like 2 years from now, I don't think the league or another team would have too much of a problem bringing him back. I mean, you gotta, like, I don't know, like right now, if unless I'm forgetting about something, I don't think he's like hurt anybody, which is always the one that seems like is kind of unforgivable, right? Like, you can't hurt anybody. But we see, I mean, think about all the bad things that people have done over the years and made it back based on their abilities alone, right? Even if they're not even that remorseful. So Ja Morant's one of the best players on the planet. If he gets things figured out, turned around, and all that kind of stuff in like 2 years or a year, whatever it is, I think even if this gets a little worse, but that happens, he would have a spot. I don't think they're going to blackball John Morant unless he hurts somebody. Which, again, I don't know what's going on with him, man.
Yeah, another follow up from Shams. This is actually, I believe, language that has come from the NBA league office, and this literally, he tweeted this less than a minute ago. The league office found that John Morant intentionally and prominently displayed a gun while in a car on May 13th, the second such occurrence over 3 months. So the NBA says, their quote, Morant wielded the firearm while knowing that he was being recorded and that the recording was being live streamed. So that was the findings from the league office. I mean, they're not wrong, right? I mean, that's what happened. He intentionally and prominently displayed the gun while in the car. He's got, a history of doing that sort of thing. And I think from Adam Silver's point of view, Jacob, it's one of those, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. He gave him the opportunity to apologize to the league. If you believe reporting, and I don't know if this has been confirmed or not, but there was a report that the apology that John Morant typed up or that he distributed out was actually written by AI, that he didn't even write it. But Adam Silver gave him a chance to meet with him, to apologize, he gave that interview with Jalen Rose, all of these different things to avoid this situation that we're in right now, to avoid a suspension, to avoid it being, the top headline. This very easily could have derailed the attention that was on the NBA finals. And now the finals are done. We know what that suspension is, but I can imagine that, I would even think in my mind that 25 games is, I think, fairly lenient, knowing that this is the second time that this has happened. I can't imagine that Adam Silver is going to be any more lenient moving forward.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like, is John Morant doing anything? And I don't know the answer. This is a legitimate question. Is he doing anything illegal in these? Because that's it.
He did. I don't know about this most recent situation, but it was, I think, technically illegal in Colorado. Because I remember the stories that he was flashing a gun in a strip club in Denver, and based on the firearm restrictions in that state, there was, I think, speculation that was against the law what he was doing.
Against that, and that's the other thing too. Like I know that the NBA has an image and they don't like this, but there's a line you got to be careful with too. Like, John Morant owning a gun is fine. Like he can do that, I think, unless he's not allowed to, but based on where he is or any restrictions he has. So it's a hard one. This has always been a pretty hard story for me for that reason. Like what is he doing that's illegal? What is he doing that's destructive? Like doing something stupid, but that's within the law is different than breaking the law, right? Like Frank Clark's situation with the weapon was against the law, right? Recently. But, it's not illegal for John Morant to have a gun or to even put it on Instagram, I don't think, if he's doing it, in legal circumstances. So that's where like the language on it, like what can't he do? Like because I don't think the NBA can come in and take away his legal rights. So I don't know. This is going to be a little bit tricky. I'm going to have to like see a little bit more about like because aren't they just using, from what I can see, it's just destructive behavior is what they're labeling it as or whatever.
Reckless behavior.
How do you define that? Yeah. How do you define it? Like it gets there's a little bit of a gray area there.
Right. They've also used the language conduct detrimental to the league.
Sure.
Here's the statement from Adam Silver. John Morant's decision to once again wield a firearm on social media is alarming and disconcerting given his similar conduct in March, for which he was already suspended 8 games. The potential for other young people to emulate Ja's conduct is particularly concerning. Under these circumstances, we believe a suspension of 25 games is appropriate and makes clear that engaging in reckless and irresponsible behavior with guns will not be tolerated. For Ja, basketball needs to take a backseat at this time. Prior to his return to play, he will be required to formulate and fulfill a program with the league that directly addresses the circumstances that led him to repeat this destructive behavior. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I guess they can. I'm just trying to put it in perspective of everybody else. Like what would, and I always try to do this on these to understand them better. Like, is it reasonable for the NBA to restrict him from doing things that aren't necessarily illegal? And I think that it probably is, because like if you or I sign a work contract and they say you can't, I mean, smoking pot's a little different now because that gets into some state and federal law things. I'm just trying to think of like behavior that might not necessarily be illegal. Well, let's take that. So if a good example, I suppose, is if I get on social media waving a gun around, walking around, that my employer's probably not going to like that,
Right.
and probably could
100%.
find a way to, even though what I'm doing isn't illegal. But the thing is, like, John Morant's got a lot of money, and this is going to cost him about $10 million, by the way. An attorney might go back and push back. I don't know. It's like it's this weird line. There may be very specific language in his contract and all that makes this much clearer, which probably is the case, because that's what we would deal with, right? That's what a lot of us would deal with. You sign this thing.
There's a lot of
it's pretty much like public image and detrimental to the league is always the key there. So and that's how, I guess I'm talking my way back to this, because guys get suspended before the legal process plays itself out all the time, and it's because conduct detrimental to the league, and that probably has enough merit here to warrant this and not put the NBA in a sticky situation.
Yeah, it's not necessarily just about the legal ramifications of it. I think a lot of folks, if you're signing a contract with an employer, and they don't all have this, but I know for a fact that there are contracts that, buried in the legal jargon, there are morality clauses and there are things like that, if you're doing something publicly or whatever that reflects back onto the organization that you're a part of, there could potentially be ramifications on that. And so, knowing that, and of course, like when you're an NBA or a professional athlete in general, you're going to be held to a higher standard, one way or another, based off of what the language in your contract says and the fact that you're a public figure and all of that. And then I think it's that, and then you add on the fact that this is not the first time this has happened. Of course, there's going to be a punishment that's levied against you that, I think could be interpreted as severe. So I think that it's important, Jacob, and I think our final word on this before we move on to the Michael Jordan news, is that even though the number of games is 25, there's no guarantee that he's going to be back after 25. And it makes me wonder, knowing the fact that, it's pretty clear this guy needs some help. I wonder if he's going to be able to get the help that he needs, because if he doesn't, he won't be back after 25 games.
Yeah, I don't know. That's again, back to all that, the full circle. I don't, that's my fear, is that there's a rock bottom that hasn't happened yet, because I don't think he seems healthy. He does not seem healthy to me. Not that I'm a professional, but I want to see him get back on the floor, get this behind him, because he's a great basketball player, and obviously we root for the best for anybody. But yeah, maybe this sends a message. 10 million is 10 million. I don't know.
All right, let's shift gears here in the NBA. Michael Jordan, we talked about it at the end of hour number 1, sells his majority stake in the Charlotte Hornets. It looks like the valuation, Jacob, according to ESPN, $3 billion. A $3 billion valuation is what Adrian Wojnarowski is reporting. So I think, we discussed it briefly before the break. How do you contrast Michael Jordan as a player versus Michael Jordan as an owner?
That there's success level, but just like the success level as an owner is going to be that he's able to sell for whatever it is, way more than what he bought for. That's how you judge the success as a businessman. He's made an incredible investment in return. So now, from the winning perspective, it has not gone well. I don't know though. Like, it's hard and it's especially hard in the NBA too, because winning is, in smaller markets, it's harder because you almost have to be able to get free agents to come where you are. Like, you almost have to. And so for some of these teams, like I almost don't hold NBA, and they have salary cap and stuff like that. So I don't know. It hasn't been successful in wins and losses. Bottom line, it's time, with the Wizards wasn't successful wins and losses. So if you're looking at it from wins and losses as an owner, and you'd have to talk to Charlotte people. What do they think of Michael Jordan as an owner, I suppose? because they haven't won games.
Right. I mean, they ended this season 27-55. They do have the number 2 pick in the draft. And so the reporting is that he will oversee basketball operations through the NBA draft next week and the start of free agency on July 1st. And then at that point, he, I believe, will not be overseeing basketball operations. He'll be a minority stake. He'll be involved with the franchise to an extent, but not at the level that he currently is. And I think that, so the reporting, you go back to 2010 when Jordan bought the majority stake in the team, paid $275 million, right? Selling it for a valuation of $3 billion. I mean, those numbers are even bigger than what we talked about before the break. That's a huge financial win for Michael Jordan. For a guy that clearly, I mean, made a ton of money throughout his career as a player through endorsements and the Nike deal and Gatorade. I mean, all the different things that he was a part of. Incredibly wealthy, super wealthy. And then you add in the amount of money that he's making as an owner. I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. There's not been a more successful professional athlete financially than Michael Jordan. I mean, I don't think there is. I mean, I think you can look at Tiger Woods as somebody like that.
He's the only other one that comes to mind.
There's not another professional athlete in the history of professional sports, in my mind, that's been more successful financially than Michael Jordan.
Yeah, probably not. I don't think because in its heart, like with the Air Jordan thing, like it's never going to stop. That's the thing. I'm trying to. So Tiger Woods would.
You're looking at revenue in perpetuity. I mean, it's always going.
Yeah, Tiger Woods is going to be this on that. Tiger Woods will be the same way, and John Madden was that way through his video game a little bit, but not to the same level. And unless Patrick Mahomes gets some Tom Brady, it probably needs to be in the conversation too.
Sure.
But now, if you're selling like for a $2 billion profit, nobody's going to catch that. Like Tiger Woods isn't even going to catch that. And probably the Air Jordan thing is bigger than it. Yeah, no, I don't think anybody's going to be able to be close to it. No.
So let's look at, I pulled up a list here of the highest paid athletes of all time. So number 1 is Michael Jordan. And that's even before, I mean, the sale is even finalized. Michael Jordan has inflation adjusted earnings of $3.3 billion. Tiger Woods comes in at number 2. Then you've got a couple of other golfers at 3 and 4, Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus. Of course, these are inflation adjusted earnings. So they made less money, but if you adjust it for inflation, Arnold Palmer, before he passed away, $1.7 billion, Jack Nicklaus, $1.63 billion, Cristiano Ronaldo at number 5, LeBron James at number 6, Lionel Messi at number 7, Floyd Mayweather at 8. And then you've got Roger Federer at 9. So, you have to go all the way down to 13 and 14 to find Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. They're both at right around $1 billion as far as their worth is concerned. So Tom Brady, by the way, is all the way down at number 22. So, I mean, I would imagine
will go up, though. Tom Brady's will go up.
After this sale, though, I mean, if, Jordan was already number 1, he's going to put some space between himself and Tiger Woods at number 2 for sure.
Catch him. I mean, because you've got to take it. Like there'll be other players that get involved in ownership, right? But they won't. It's hard to imagine they'll have both something like Air Jordan and that ownership component. Yeah, no, I mean, the crazy thing is too right now, honestly, like if you were a company, and you could have any basketball player right now endorse your product, would Michael Jordan still be the one that you would take? I mean, he might be, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, the guy is 62 years old or whatever. I mean, he's like in his 60s. I mean, maybe so. I mean, of course, like LeBron's going to be on the list and, others, but man, I think Jordan still has a significant amount of value to be able to add to a brand. If you're, looking at trying to endorse something,
he probably doesn't have the same. Right? He probably doesn't have the same retention for young people, I would imagine, though. Like young kids are going to start not knowing who he is, other than his shoe. Like they're not going to know who he is as a player.
Well, I'll tell you, he's got a lot more money now to be able to.
Yeah,
I guess
he'll be all right.
Bet on the golf course and do it. He'll be okay. I think he'll be able to figure that out. But yeah, that's the breaking news. A couple of different NBA breaking news pieces here in hour number 2: the John Morant suspension, and then of course Michael Jordan selling his majority stake in the Charlotte Hornets. We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, Jay Delling joins us to talk Wichita Open day number 2. We'll be joined by him on the other side. Tommy Castor, Jacob Albracht, and Jad Chambers at Sports Daily on KFH. Welcome back, everybody. It's Sports Daily on a Friday right here on KFH. I'm Tommy Castor, Jacob Albracht with me, Jad Chambers producing the show today. Joined on the IHOP hotline at 869-1240 with our buddy Jay Delling. We had Jay on yesterday to talk about day number 1 of the Wichita Open. Day number 1 is in the books. And now we're into day number 2 out at Crestview Country Club. Jay, welcome to the show. How's day number 2 going so far?
I'm just working on my tan. It's sunny. It's warm. We had a wet start to the morning, but the clouds have cleared. The sun is shining. Gallery is entering at warp speed. They're ready for golf today. I think this is a mental health day in Wichita for a lot of.
I think so. I think so too, Jay. Just like soak it up. So what do we think on this year? We had such low scores last year. What's the feel out there this year? Are we going to get back into that territory? We're going to get a little more back to normal. How's this thing going to play out? And where do you think that cut line is going to be today?
Yeah, I think this is going to be kind of a hybrid year because Norman Xiong last year, I don't know what course he played, but and you know, the other competitors were wondering too. There was an A flight and a B flight because he double bogeyed the 72nd hole to win by 5 and become the second lowest 72-hole score ever in the history of the Korn Ferry Tour. So got to kind of put that aside a little bit. Second place was at 21 under, which is a reasonable expectation for a winning score here in Wichita. Typically, it's between 16 and 20 under. But this year, because conditions are pretty benign, like right now, I'm looking at the top of the trees, and it looks like a picture because they're not moving. And already there's some hot scoring on the course. Patrick Fishburne, for example, is 6 under through his first 12 holes. Patrick Welch is 5 under through his first 8 holes. So that indicates to me that scoring was really good yesterday. I think scoring might be a touch better today. My prediction on a cut line is it's going to be somewhere around 5 under. Right now, we have 30 players within 4 shots of the lead. So Patrick Fishburne's at 10 under for the tournament. Like I said, he's 6 under on his round, so he's off to a quick start. So I think it's going to be an old-fashioned Dodge City shootout. This field is very deep. It's very talented. Guys are already starting to go low this morning, and as long as the wind stays down, I think we're going to continue to see low scores this afternoon as well.
Do we think that the players, Jay, that are already out on the golf course will have a little bit more of an advantage because of the rain last night, where the greens are going to be able to hold a little bit more, you know, and if we get into the afternoon where it starts to dry out and, you know, maybe those greens start to run a little bit faster, do you think a competitive advantage for those players who are already out on the golf course today?
Yeah, I do. I think they're licking their chops this morning because I'm not sure how much rain we had, but enough to really soften up these morning wave greens. I think you're right. They'll get a little bit harder this afternoon. They might quicken up a little bit. So the guys that play this morning, I think, have a small advantage. But these guys are so doggone good. They hit it so far. They have wedges into, you know, most of the par 4s. They can reach the par 5s. And so when you put wedges in these guys' hands, it's dangerous and they can work magic. So, yeah, we've already seen several guys with low scores already this morning. And I like I said, I think it'll continue this afternoon, but I think certainly these morning wave guys have a small advantage.
How are we looking on any of our locals here, Jay, this year? Jay Delling joining us, talking Wichita Open. Any of the locals got a chance to make noise, make the weekend? What is that looking like?
Yeah, so Dodge Kemmer, who played out of Independent High School here in Wichita, shot a 5 under par 65. So right now he's in the top 20. He hasn't played yet. He'll play this afternoon. So, you know, if he can play 2, 3, 4, 5 under this afternoon, he's going to be in pretty good shape for the weekend. It's hard to anticipate what that lead score might be by the end of the day. It could be 12 under, could be 14 under, probably somewhere in that general range. But if you can get within 4 or 5 shots of the lead going into the weekend, I would like my chances. So Dodge Kimmer's off to a good start. Again, he went to independent high school, went to Stanford, smart kid. He's kind of bumped around some of the mini tours, and he's been on and off this tour. He's played overseas. So he's a veteran at this point, and so everybody's rooting for him.
Talking to Jay Delling here on Sports Daily about day number 2 of the Wichita Open, the cut line. That'll be interesting to keep our eyes on as the day rolls on. Jay, my wife texted me yesterday afternoon, and we've gone out to the Wichita Open maybe for many years. She was driving by the course, and I think she was able to see 17 from the road. I'm pretty sure on 13th is where she was driving by, and she texted me and she said, "I'm not sure I've ever seen 17 so busy on a Thursday before." And of course, we've seen it, packed on the weekend and all of that. How was attendance in day number 1? And, obviously going to be gearing up for a big attended weekend.
Yeah, according to tournament director Dusty Buell, he was very happy with attendance on day number 1. Friday, again, is always busy, is always filled with fun and frolic because a lot of people take today off. 17 is sold out today and tomorrow. Earlier in the week, there were still some tickets left for 17 for Sunday. It might be sold out at this point. I'm not sure, but I think the weather's going to cooperate. It's not going to be overly warm, which is really kind of odd. I'm not even sure if it's supposed to get in the 90s for the rest of the week, which normally at this point it's 95 to 100 easily. But no, your wife was right on point. We had a great attendance yesterday at 17, and as I'm looking out in our welcome center, I mean, there's just droves of people entering the grounds here at Crestview, and for $10, I mean, what a great value to come out here and be entertained by arguably the second best tour in the world.
Well, it arguably the second best tour in the world with the best tournament on the tour, right? Like we hear that. That's the thing we always hear from the golfers when you talk to them, is that they have more fun with this tournament than any other tournament. And I think, Jay, right? I mean, that's because of the fans. Like it's like our version of what's that tournament out in Phoenix every year. Like it's the party, and guys talk about the golfers talk about it all the time.
Well, the golfers, and over the years, I've had a chance to have this conversation with these players, and they say, you know what, the people in the Midwest are just a different breed. They're nicer, they're kinder. We just hear, more affirmations from them. And so they absolutely love coming to Wichita. Crestview prepares this golf course. It's in immaculate shape. We've got 500 volunteers that help puts this thing on. And the players just love it. They just absolutely love it. And we've gotten some nice accolades from the tour. We've been tournament of the year a couple of times. 17 by far, they say, is the best hole on tour. And so there's a lot of positive things that come from playing here in Wichita.
As we get into the weekend, Jay, I know you mentioned a couple of names of guys who are, already going low here on a Friday, and the cut will happen after today. As far as some names that people can keep their eyes on as the weekend goes on, let's give another recap of just the leaderboard, where things stand as of right now for this weekend.
Yeah. And so, I get asked that question a lot. And in years past, my answer is pretty simple. There's 156 guys in this field. Shut your eyes, throw a dart at the board, and that name may be as good as anybody else. My attitude on that question has changed because of the influx of young players. College golf is now a developmental tour. so we're 2 weeks out of college golf, and already our leaderboard, our top 10 to 15 is littered with guys who have just graduated from college, just played in the NCAA tournament a couple of weeks ago. Ross Steelman, an All-American from Georgia Tech, playing in his first tournament as a professional. He's 8 under par for the tournament. He's 3 under for the day. He's only played 7 holes. He's at 8 under, 2 shots in back of leader Patrick Fishburne. Pearson Coody, whose grandfather Charlie won the 1971 Masters, who graduated from Texas just a year ago. He won the NCAA championship a year ago. He's won twice on this tour already. He's at 8 under as well as Steelman, only 2 shots in back of Fishburne. Coody's already 5 under through 14. So the leaderboard is just littered with these outstanding players, and maybe the best one of them all won't tee off until this afternoon for his second round, and that's former Illinois player Adrian Dumont Deschessart. He's at 6 under. He shot 6 under par 64 yesterday, was tied for second place. He hasn't teed off yet. And the reason I like this kid is because he overnight, a week ago, he was an amateur. He was a college player. Overnight, he became a professional, and he won the BMW Classic last week back in South Carolina. He's $180,000 richer because of it.
Wow. Well, definitely a lot of great storylines. Yeah, for what you're saying, a lot of names on that list.
Absolutely. And they're all these, 20-year-old kids. It's just amazing. We just haven't seen that in golf until, the last few years. Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, and Matthew Wolff all came out of college 3 years ago. All 3 of them won within a year of turning pro and playing the PGA Tour. And Colin Morikawa, A, has already won a major. B, he played here as an amateur, as a 19-year-old amateur in 2016, and was tied for the lead after 72 holes, lost in a playoff to Ollie Schneider-Jans. So these kids can flat play.
Well, I can't think of a better way to spend the Father's Day weekend than out at Crestview Country Club for the weekend playing of the Wichita Open. So Jay, final word as we get into the weekend. If there's somebody listening right now that is kind of on the fence about going out, walking the grounds, following some players, or maybe even going to the new fan zone, 17th green, whatever that looks like, what would you tell them to get them out to the Wichita Open this weekend?
Yeah, $10 to get in, and you've got 100 acres to roam around in. See some great golf. You're gonna see several people you're gonna have some awesome refreshments and some food, and you're just hanging around with like-minded people who just want to get out, have some fun, get some exercise, walk around.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun this weekend. And of course, the competitive nature of it always makes it a blast. And we'll see where the cut line is at the end of today, and then what the winning score ends up being on Sunday afternoon. Jay Delling joining us here on Sports Daily. Jay, thanks for the time, and have fun this weekend. It's going to be a blast.
You got it. You guys have a good and blessed weekend.
All right, Jay Delling joining us here talking Wichita Open on Sports Daily. We're going to take a break, come back. Our final full segment of the show is on the other side. It's Sports Daily on KFH. Our thanks to Jay Delling joining us in the last segment, talking about the Wichita Open. If you are looking for something fun to do today and this weekend, the Wichita Open out at Crestview Country Club is always a ton of fun. Jacob, in our final full segment here, I want to revisit the U.S. Open and give everybody a scoring update. How about this? Wichita guy, Sam Stevens, after an opening round 75, he's on the golf course right now and has gone 2 under through his first 6 holes. He's now 3 over for the entire tournament, 2 under so far today. That projected cut line right now sets at about 1 over par. So if he can get another couple of birdies on the round, you never know. Sam Stevens could be making the cut.
Yeah, I hope so. That's what you want, right? You just want to see all 4 rounds come in, and he's had a really good year. Let's not make any bones about it. So I suspect that he'll make a run at that cut line, and if he's only through 6, who knows if it stays there, but it'll probably stay close. Yeah, I'd say the chances are pretty good based on what we saw guys score yesterday. But that's the thing. Like, how much will it change? I don't know. Like, I don't know what you can do. I just don't think pin placement's gonna get the U.S. Open to where it's used to being.
Well, I think that they can do some things, and they probably already have to, even make it incrementally more difficult or, marginally more difficult. I think that, by tucking some pins and doing things like that, and maybe they're not doing all of that today, and the USGA trying to save some of those tricks for the weekend. They could always move tee boxes back and make some holes longer. I know that there were a couple of par
you can do that. I wondered about that.
Oh, for
I wondered
sure.
about distance.
Yeah, for sure you can. Yeah, you can definitely change that, throughout a tournament. And there are a couple of par 3s that already, play like 250, 260, 270. So there are some difficult par 3s out there, but you can definitely lengthen the course a little bit, I would think. So there probably are some things that are up the sleeve of the USGA as they get into today and then this weekend. Some other notable names, by the way, that are going to be battling to make the cut. Patrick Reed is at 2 over. Shane Lowry at 2 over. Justin Thomas is at 3 over right now. So there, Adam Scott, Jason Day, they're at 3 over as well. Definitely some notable names that are trying to battle to make the cut right now. There are some scores, Jacob, some players that are on the course right now that are towards the top of the leaderboard. Wyndham Clark is 1 under par, so he's at 7 under overall, 1 back from Fowler and Schauffele, who both tee off later this afternoon. Dustin Johnson, 6 under. Rory McIlroy, 5 under. It's going to be a battle, and it's going to be a battle of some top names. Chelsea Messenger mentioned it yesterday on the show that when you look at a major like the U.S. Open, that's the time to bet the chalk. It's not really the time to go out and try to find a long shot winner necessarily, or, somebody to go in and that we don't really know of that will place in the top 10. This is where the stars come out. And we've seen that so far with Ricky Fowler, Xander Schauffele, Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler. They're all in the mix as we get into day 2.
Yeah, and that's what you want too, just from a fan's perspective. Like the majors aren't where you want a whole lot of unknown. Like you want the known for these, and I'm that way too. And I like the underdog as much as anybody, but not in a major. Like in a major, I want to see the dudes, right? You want to see those guys. Yeah, I think that what score's going lower, Tommy? And I think this is an easy answer that the Wichita Open will go lower than the U.S. Open. What kind of odds would you give it? Like what kind of odds would you give it though that somebody can keep that up at the U.S. Open? And
like
go,
you think
let's
that
say
somebody will shoot lower than what they're shooting at the Wichita Open?
Yeah, like could the winning score any possibility on the planet that the winning score gets lower?
No, I don't think so. I really don't. In
so
fact,
if the winning scores somewhere between 16 and 20 at the Open this year, at the Wichita Open, I mean, when guys go 6 under and there's that many at the top, don't you think somebody can sniff 15 under?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that, again, it wouldn't surprise me to see some of these players back up a little bit. And I want to pose this question to you because I think we had connection issues when I brought it up before in the first hour. Ricky Fowler sets atop the leaderboard at 8 under par, 62. Ricky Fowler had fallen off the face of the planet, like wasn't even qualifying for majors. Here he is at 8 under par. So the game has obviously come around for him. But his big knock and a big reason why he's never won a major is because he's never been able to sustain that level of play through an entire 4-day period. So my question is, can Ricky Fowler do that? Can he do that on a stage like the US Open? He's never been able to do it before.
I mean, history tells us no, right? But it's possible. I just don't know, man. I think if they go 8, I think they could get to 15, 16, 17 under. I don't know that they're going to be able to do enough. And it would be different if there was only like one guy shooting that crazy after round one. But there's a bunch of them. And that's what makes it sort of feel like when we get to Open, there's so many guys always in the mix at the end. If we get into that sort of situation,
I don't know. I just don't. I'm not sure that I see a scenario in place, and you never know. I mean, I guess that if LA Country Club continues to play the way that it played in the first round, and we start to get, if there are other players that come out and shoot 63, 64, 65 today in the US Open, and we start seeing double-digit under par scores by the time we get to the weekend, I guess at that point, all bets are off, and we could potentially see, scores in the US Open being lower than what they are in the Wichita Open. I would love, and this might be a project I'll do over the weekend. I would love to compare that because traditionally the Wichita Open and the US Open are the same weekend. I kind of want to go back in time and compare and see if that's ever happened before. I would be shocked.
There's no
if it has.
way. Not because the US Open is always so hard.
Right. But I would love to know, has it ever been close? That would be a project I want to look at this weekend because, we might be seeing that this weekend. I still don't think it's going to happen, but man, the way that the US Open played in round number 1, I guess you never know.
I think we can we invent things to, pay attention to and create. That's one that I've created, but I like it. Like, can it happen? I don't know.
Well, that's definitely bears watching as the weekend rolls on. We're going to take our final break of the show, come back, tell you what's on the network today and this weekend on the other side. Tommy Castor, Chad Chambers, Jacob Albracht. We'll be right back. All right, thanks to everybody for listening today on the network. As always, Jim Rome follows us at 11, Bob and Jeff at 2, Maggie and Perloff at 4, Zach Gelb at 5. The Royals kick off a 3-game set against the Angels this weekend. We've got coverage of all 3 games tonight at 7 o'clock, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and Sunday matinee at 1 p.m. Thanks for joining us this week. Jacob, safe travels back from Amarillo. We'll see you when you get back here on Tuesday.
Sounds good. Be good. Enjoy the Open, everybody, this weekend.
For Jad Chambers, for Jacob Albracht, I'm Tommy Castor. Hope everybody has a great weekend. We will see you back here on Monday.